Welcome to Growth Hack by Poppy Digital. Tips and tricks to master the algorithms from industry insiders. Now here's your host, Julian Espinoza.
Welcome back to Growth Hack, where we break down marketing channels like Google, Facebook, Instagram, and show them how to make them work for you. Podcasting. We end up having this as a recurring topic because I'm telling you guys, podcasting is a growth hack. Of course, I'm biased since I have one, but if you put in the work, which trust me, it's a lot of work, it really pays dividends. Well, on to this episode, we bring on Dimple Dang to talk to us about getting our podcast exposed on Google and how we're starting to see actual podcast play buttons on Google search. Dimple is a passionate marketing expert that helps law firms, doctors, entrepreneurs, and small businesses take their marketing to the next level. Dimple is the host of Memorizing Marketing and the founder of Reels for Lawyers Challenge. Dimple is skilled at SEO, WordPress, web design, content creation, blogging, and Instagram. Welcome, Dimple.
Hey, Julian. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Really excited to talk about what Google's doing with podcasts.
Yeah, I can't wait to share all of the exciting news.
So Google has been changing things up for us, and we're starting to see Google display podcasts in the search results. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely, Julian. So there's a couple of ways that Google, you can get your podcast to show up in the search results on Google. And, one of the ways is through your show notes. So if you have let's say a WordPress website, you have show notes on there, you can strategically write your title of the podcast, the show notes, to rank high for a specific keyword. But what's really cool, Julian, is recently what Google has done is they have a new algorithm with podcasts. If you're searching for a podcast, let's say my podcast is called Mesmerizing Marketing, right? So if I go to Google, I type in Mesmerizing Marketing podcast, now it's highlighting a couple of episodes from my podcast, so people can, click on that box and go directly and listen to an episode. And what they're basing it off of is what type of audio, what type of keywords are in that episode. And if it's relevant to the keyword that someone is typing into Google, it's going to render those search results to show. And this is huge, Julian, because when you think about, prime real estate, people are paying thousands and thousands of dollars for pay-per-click campaigns just to rank on page one of Google. And this is a prime opportunity, if it's used strategically, to rank on page one of Google for almost, anything that you want, as long as you have a podcast and you have a strategy behind it. The key is having a strategy.
Google's called this rich snippet, right? So rich snippet goes beyond just the text-based search results. We've seen in the past, we've seen images, we've seen videos, and I guess now podcasting, right? We've seen news. So now that podcasting is actually like a rich snippet in the Google search results, this gives someone the ability to hit play directly from a search result. What do you think that's going to do to the industry?
That's huge. I think it's going to blow up the industry. I think once people catch on to this in terms of Google, even, I'm a marketing expert. So if I share this strategy with a client that doesn't even have a podcast, trust me, they're going to be compelled to launch a podcast. I can think of, personal injury attorneys right now that can really excel with this strategy. Because when you think of a podcast too, the links are coming from very powerful authoritative sites, right? Spotify, Apple, they have millions and millions of pages indexed. And the more powerful the site is, and you're getting an authoritative link back, that's going to give you the power that you need to rank even higher. So that really, really makes a big difference. I think if someone wants to be strategic about it, you could really come up with a strategy to rank for all of the products and services that you provide in all of the areas and territories and cities or states that you want to get clients from.
This is interesting because this is rather new. I've only seen it for a few months. You've seen it only for a short time too. So I think the cat isn't out of the bag yet exactly what their algorithm is to have literally an episode to be playing from the search results. I think we're going to start to figure out how to do that. So, but my guess is this. the things that you were doing to rank your podcast naturally without this rich snippet, just ranking naturally, I'm assuming those will be the same things and the same signals Google will want to see in order to rank your podcast in now this rich snippet way. So can you go into the strategy that you've used to get a podcast on page one? I think you mentioned show notes. If you can go deeper into that, or the other tactics that you've used.
Yeah, absolutely, Julian. So, with show notes, I mean, with many podcast hosting companies, they give you a basic website and that's fine. But if you really want to take your content to the next level, it's important to have your own WordPress website. WordPress is the best platform because it gives you the ability to add plugins. You can add a plugin called Yoast, Yoast, Yoast SEO plugin, and that helps you with the SEO portion of it. And every time you're posting show notes for an episode, it's really important to be strategic about how you title that episode. Don't just say episode 155 with Julian Espinoza. Like, okay, unless someone's a celebrity, no one really cares about that. What they care about is, what problem is this podcast episode going to solve for someone? What questions is it going to answer? How is it going to help someone with something, right? And when you think about Google, it's a search engine and people go there for information. They type questions in. So you have to think of like the end user. If they're typing questions in, your podcast title should be in the formation of a question. And then you can always add at the end with Dimple Dang, right? Because but initially it should be like, what question does it answer, right? So if I have a podcast episode and the title is, how to get more subscribers and downloads, for your podcast. Like, that's really a question. And people are searching for that. They're typing it into Google. So the title is really important, but also the content is really important. And, in terms of traditional SEO, the first paragraph should have the main keyword in there. So you pick one keyword that you want to try to SEO. And then you should have it in the last paragraph as well, and maybe one or two more times. And it has to be organic. You can't just like stuff things and like put in keywords everywhere. It has to make sense, thematically and all that. So, that's like the basic gist of it. But also images are important. Just how you saw how podcasts are getting, indexed. Well, images have there's a whole images are indexed too. So, and I don't think people realize this. You can take any image on the web. I was on Hotwire today looking at hotels, and I'm like, oh, here's a picture of a hotel. They're not going to give me the name, but I'm going to be sneaky. I'm going to find the name. So I took a screenshot of the image. I put it into Google Images, and it literally told me, okay, this is the search result, the name of the hotel. You have to be like an investigator sometimes.
All right, so Dimple, here's an interesting question. You mentioned WordPress is a great platform for podcasts. So I think what you're saying is, if you have a podcast and you're considering starting a website, you should absolutely do it on WordPress. Now, let's talk about the people who already have a website, who might be on Shopify, BigCommerce, something that's not WordPress. What would you recommend for them? Would you recommend a separate website for the podcast? Would you recommend under the same domain and maybe kind of not doing it on WordPress? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't recommend Shopify. That's more so for e-commerce, so that's a whole different ball game. But in general, like for example, someone might have their website on Wix, right? And Wix is great for beautiful websites, but it is not great for SEO. So what I would recommend, and then also there's websites that come with your hosting plan. Like I use Captivate.fm, and I have a beautiful website that comes with that, and all of my episodes are there, and I can put in my own show notes. However, when I have time, I plan on, having a WordPress website where I'm going to have show notes for every single episode that are going to be at least around 400 words, right? And then if somebody has a website on Wix or different platform, I would recommend having a website on WordPress. On the other ones, if all you're doing is you have a feed coming from the platforms to showcase like your episodes, but you don't have show notes, you can keep that. It's just another source, but you don't want to duplicate content. You don't want to have show notes there identical to the show notes you have on your WordPress site, because Google hates duplicate content and you're going to get penalized for that.
So that's an interesting question that you bring up, this duplicate content issue. I'll give you an example from our case. We have our website, and we index every single episode, right? So every episode has a page on our website for a specific page, and then we use the same show notes or episode description. We use the same one. So are you suggesting that we should change it from what's on the podcast?
Well, what's on, what's on the podcast, like you're not going to change it, but what's on the podcast is just going to be the episode and maybe some basic show notes. So what a lot of people do is like the website that comes with the platform, like with captivate.fm or whatever, hosting platform you're using, for show notes, in the show notes section, what I do, like sometimes we do this for other people, is like we'll link it and we'll say, okay, in this episode, so and so interviewed so and so on this topic, and click here to see the show notes. And then when they click, it goes to a separate landing page on a WordPress website where it's extensive and you can see like a whole like 4, 5, 6 paragraphs with images and contact information for guests and all of that.
So Dimple, this has been great. Now, I know that you have a few different types of master classes. I don't know if they're free or not. Can you talk about the one where someone needs help with marketing their show? Do you have? I believe you have a master class around that. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I do a lot of clubhouse rooms and I get so many questions on how to market my podcast. How do I get more subscribers and downloads and views and all of that? So I decided to put together a 1.5 hour masterclass, which is going to be live via Zoom. And I really want to teach podcasters how to market their podcast properly, how to promote it, how to get more subscribers and downloads. And if you guys want the information for that, it's going to be in my Instagram bio link. My Instagram handle is She Wears Stilettos, and I'm sure Julian will link it for you guys in the show notes.
Absolutely. We will put that in the show notes. And then for anyone who's listening to this who has not started a podcast yet, I think you have also a masterclass on that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I put together a really amazing launch your podcast in one day live masterclass. It's going to be 5 hours. And when you're done with the class, as long as you do your homework, you're going to have a live podcast that weekend. So I'm really excited about that because I think, accountability is so important. And that gives you the accountability when you sign up for something and you dedicate 5 hours on your calendar to work on your podcast and also get all of your questions answered. It just makes it super, super, achievable to get your podcast launched. I think everybody should have a podcast. So my next one is September 18th, but this is something I'm going to be doing every couple of weeks. So if you guys, want information on that, again, you can go to my Instagram, which is She Wears Stilettos, and there's a bio link that has all of that information there.
It's funny talking about your Instagram handle. I'm always trying to search for your Instagram handle with Dimple, but it's actually She Wears Stilettos. So you're changing my my searching behavior. But Dimple, thanks for coming on the show. Super excited. As our friend Mark says, done is better than perfect, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, we look forward to having you back on the show. Thanks, Dimple.
Thank you, Julian.